Hey everyone, now I wanted to give you a quick update about student learning outcomes number 3 and 4. So with student learning outcome number 3, you're giving a list of 6 scenarios, and they are very short, very simple, with not a lot of detail. And the directions ask you to read the scenario and then determine if the person committed the crime that is listed. So for example, the first one will give you a short, brief scenario, and it'll ask you, did this person commit murder? Now, you know from researching the statutes earlier in this semester that there are different categories of murder for North Carolina. So you'll need to be familiar with those, and then I want you to determine if this person committed first-degree murder or second-degree murder or manslaughter. It'll be up to you to read those statutes and determine if the elements have been met. You'll need to be very specific with your answers, where you identify the North Carolina General Statute, as well as why or why not this person's actions meet those elements. Now, for student learning outcome number 4, it will be very different. You'll be given a list of categories of crimes, and you'll get to choose one from each category to write about. And whatever one you choose, you will pick the crime. You'll list out what the North Carolina General Statute is, and that'll be in reference to the number. You will list the elements that must be met in order for a person to be convicted of this crime, and then you will prepare a brief scenario on your own. So for example, I listed an example in my instructions for you where I gave you an example of the felony murder rule. And I went back and used a real life case from earlier this year that happened in May, where Dakota Witt drove through a sobriety checkpoint with the North Carolina Highway Patrol in the western part of the state, and as a result of his actions, Trooper Bullard ended up giving chase to him and wrecked his vehicle, and he passed away in that crash. Now, Dakota and I believe another defendant has been charged with felony murder. And the North Carolina General Statute says that anyone that is in the commission of a felony, and it lists out some items, can be charged under the first-degree murder rule. So if you look at my example, you will see how I pulled that out. I listed what the elements were for felony murder, and then I also listed what the elements were for first-degree murder, and then I described his behavior and how it met those elements. Now, this one was a little more complex because I also needed to prove that he was committing a felony to begin with, which he was, because it was felony eluding arrest. So I also listed that crime, and I highlighted the elements that he had met. So for example, in that statute, it says 2 or more must be present. And so I highlighted because I think from memory he had 4 that were present that I know of with limited information, because law enforcement obviously hasn't released all of the details. So again, you're going to need to be very detailed in your answer, where you identify what crime you have chosen from each of the categories, the general statute in terms of the number, the elements that must be met, and then you're going to provide an example. This can be a real life example or a hypothetical example, but it must meet the elements of the crime in order to get credit for it. Now, I've asked you to do at least 7 crimes from the different categories. To earn 100 points and get all the points in each part of the rubric, you would need to do 8 or more. So just be aware of that. The minimum is 7 crimes. But if you want to earn all points, then you will go above and beyond, and you will choose at least 8 or more. Make sure that you read over the rubric so that you understand how points will be deducted, because points will be taken off for inaccuracies so far as listing out the elements or incorrectly identifying a statute. Points will also be deducted for spelling and grammar errors. So I want you to make sure that what you are submitting is academically sound, and that it is up to requirements of a college class. So again, refer to the rubric and the instructions, and good luck with these 2 assessments. They will both be due on November the 29th.